Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Changing Justice Service Delivery to reduce returns to custody. My name is Valerie Daniele. I am joined by my colleague Snehal Jambale, and we will be your moderators for this session. Before we get started, I'll review some quick housekeeping notes, and then I'll introduce our speakers. I would like to draw your attention to the bottom of your screen. You can use the chat feature to submit questions. It would make it a lot easier if you typed question in cap locks before your question so we can sort through and find them all. We will be taking questions during. You guys are okay with during, or do you prefer after at the end? During?
Either or, we're easy, whatever works.
Yep.
If there's a pressing question that comes up, we'll take it. If there's something that the presentation will answer throughout it, we'll just say like, hey, this is something we're going to answer later on.
Okay, we'll probably leave most of them for the end, just so you're not interrupted too often. We'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can. Please ensure your microphone is on mute until the question and answer portion of the session. Please note we will be recording the session and it will be uploaded to the conference website for future viewing. And you'll be able to access all those recordings for 90 days following the conference. We kindly ask that you complete a short evaluation at the end of the session. Your feedback is very appreciated and will be used to inform future events about such as this conference. Finally, we'd like to respectively ask all of those attending today's session to engage with each other thoughtfully and always consider the impact of your words and interactions with others. As moderators, we will not tolerate abusive or inappropriate behavior and will ensure that anyone who engages in such behavior is removed from the session. I would like to now introduce our three presenters for this session: Anna Duffy from the Ministry of the Solicitor General, Jennifer Dillon from the John Howard Society of Windsor Essex County, and Whitney Kitchen, Coordinator for Housing Administration and Development for the City of Windsor. Thank you.
Hey, all right, I'm Whitney. Thanks everyone for joining our session. We're going to talk a bit today about a model that we've put in place in Windsor that is bettering solutions for justice-involved people experiencing homelessness through a coordinated hub that we've accessed deep in our city's downtown core. So this is changing justice service delivery to reduce returns to custody. Okay, so today we're going to first just quickly go over defining the problem, talk about the link between incarceration and homelessness. And then I'm going to introduce the Homelessness and Housing Help Hub, which we call H4. John Howard will speak about their program. Probation will speak about their role at our hub, and then we'll talk future state goals. So we want to start by acknowledging the bidirectional nature between homelessness and incarceration. People that are experiencing homelessness have more active surveillance from police systems, and anti-poverty policies through bylaws and different municipal legislations make contact with police and people experiencing homelessness very high. And we want to acknowledge that in provincial institutions, 71% of individuals in provincial custody in 2018 and 2019 were awaiting trial. So we have a remand center called Southwest Detention Center in our community. And those who are experiencing incarceration without yet having served a sentence are on remand. So 71% of individuals in 2018 to 2019 were in that experience. Remand rates have increased drastically in the last 15 years, increasing risks of homelessness through job loss, missed housing payments, etc. The persons most likely to be excluded from bail are those experiencing homelessness, mental health, addictions, and racialized communities. So this is more statistics. Some of these are coming from the John Howard Society No Fixed Address report, which if anyone hasn't read it, I highly recommend. That 22% of people are living with homelessness at the time of their incarceration. 85% of Ontarians who were experiencing homelessness when they went into prison were expected to remain homeless when they were released. And a third of all people leaving corrections facilities are released with no fixed address. Another contributing factor to the challenges of reestablishing yourself when you get released from custody is just how much rent prices have increased in the financialization of the housing industry. This is a reason why we see an influx in people experiencing homelessness. But rent prices have increased 2.3% per year for the last decade, with wages only increasing just under 1% over 10 years' time. Social assistance rates are inadequate to keep up with the trends for private market housing. I know specifically in our community, you can't get a private market unit that is a 1 bedroom, let alone a bachelor, for less than $1,000, and that would still be a steal. With social assistance rates being in the $700 range, depending on the family configuration. So even if someone were willing to spend their entire Ontario Works check on housing, they would not be able to obtain a 1 bedroom or bachelor unit in our community, and I'm confident it's the same for yours. In 2007, 6.33% of admissions to Ontario corrections facilities were people experiencing homelessness. So that was 1 in 16 people. And that number in 2021 is now 1 in 6. So the rate of people that are experiencing homelessness that are coming in contact with the justice system is extremely high. And solutions for justice involved homelessness need to be thoughtful because people are getting stuck in the system. Just based on a cost estimation of our local detention facility and the current cost of incarceration, which are estimated to be $341 a day, justice-involved homelessness in Windsor costs approximately $6.3 million annually, and that figure doesn't include policing and judicial costs. That's just solely the incarceration system being Southwest Detention Center. So that's a little bit about the problem, which I'm sure you guys have joined this because you're like, hey, we're having this problem in our home community too. So this is a little bit about what we did to try and mitigate some of these solutions. And this is my introduction to our Homelessness and Housing Help Hub, which we affectionately call H4. So you might hear those terms interchanged throughout this presentation. During COVID, we had to open a social distance center for people experiencing homelessness. Our shelters did not have enough capacity for day space, and with Tim Hortons and the mall and the libraries shutting down, we needed more solutions. So we opened this center, and it is an underutilized community center surrounded by rent geared to income properties. It's our highest concentration of 1 bedroom apartments, and we do have a hard to house mandate that individuals can go into that if they're experiencing a lot of obstacles in their homelessness. So the Glengarry region is like the Glengarry neighborhood is those the geared to income apartments that surround our H4 hub. And the Glengarry apartments serve almost as a justice shelter because a lot of people that are within the justice system don't want to access traditional homeless shelters, and they end up couch surfing in these communities. So having services for justice on site in this community has a particular interest because there is a very high amount of police involvement and people experiencing justice related challenges in this area. So this is the inside of our beautiful community center. It is not purpose-built, and we hope to change that, which I'll tell you a bit about at the end. But you'll see these are our hallways, our check-in center. In the bottom right corner, you'll see the gym, which plays movies, and it provides an opportunity for people to have day space to sleep, but it also has activities as well. So recently they've introduced basketball, and they have service animals that come in as well. So this is originally what was open when we started this isolation center. And through our learning that engagement was growing, it was recognized that we needed to have more services on site rather than have the clients go to the service. So we added on this additional space. And you'll see in the left side of the page, we just have some office spaces, and this is the room that John Howard and Probation operates out of. But on the right side of the screen, you'll see that we have a full medical center, which is low barrier. You don't need a health card in order to access it. There's no appointments, and you can go in and get prescriptions and get like requisite care. You can also get wound care on site. And we do have like a lower limb preservation program starting there, because we recognize there's complexities with substance use and abscesses and cellulitis, especially with tranq circulating in our community. So while we opened this social distancing center for people experiencing homelessness, we started recognizing that a lot of people were not connected to the services that they needed, and people were missing their appointments. So we're like, this is a disjointed service connection model. The point-to-point model was largely appointment-based, which we learned was less successful for individuals with multiple barriers. And 79% of the participants in our program preferred walk-in appointments when we did a poll. So our hub model allows for more of a hub and spoke model. So services come to the individuals, and this has been tremendously successful. And it's been a great model because you can't punish people's trauma for missing appointments. And there's a lot of people missing appointments for various reasons: transportation, brain injury, lack of access to technology, things like that. And this provides them the best chance of receiving the services that they need. So when we recognized we had a model that was working, we engaged Org Code Consulting, which are leaders in the homelessness sector, to complete an evaluation of our H4 hub in February of 2021. Over 3 days, staff and persons with lived experience were interviewed, and the evaluation resulted in strong demographic data, recommendations for the program to continue after the pandemic, and a clear pathway forward towards shifting programming from from passive to active. You'll see that we had 82% male participants with an average age of 43, and 40% reported Indigenous backgrounds. Over a third of people had not had a lease in their name, reported ever. But the average length of homelessness was 36 months. So we had a lot of chronic homelessness on our hands, and we had a lot of justice-involved homelessness. At the time of the center opening, I wasn't employed with the municipality. I was employed with the Canadian Mental Health Association in Windsor, working as a release from custody worker who was redeployed. And I started noticing that there was a big trend of how beneficial this hub service could be for people that were getting out of custody, because of the low barrier model to getting people connected to all of the vital supports you need when you get out of custody. Additionally, what this population scored was what we call quad morbid. Quad morbid is when people have a physical health, a mental health, an addiction, and they're experiencing homelessness. So these are high degrees of complexity. We had a very high percentage of people that reported a brain injury and significant mental health and addiction. So these were the services that we have layered on support thus far, and I want to highlight the benefit of Ontario Works. So we do have housing support on site, and a local housing agency runs the service for us. But having Ontario Works on site has been absolutely so critically important for restoring people's income, for reducing power imbalances when people have to come into a municipal building in order to get their Ontario Works re-set up or to do the intake process again. We know that people get cut off Ontario Works if they've served a 3-month sentence. This provides like a quicker jumpstart for people to get back on income assistance. It also provides a mechanism for people to get copies of their identification and for income verification letters to be sent to landlords. So the coordination of all these different services has been amazing. But when people are on Ontario Works, they also have to complete a plan of care, show that they're doing job searches or whatever it might be in order to keep their balances in check. And having Ontario Works on site has allowed for people to have less disruption in getting any of their benefits cut off, and provides a linkage to the medical supports that they need to get their drug coverage. So people can get their medications when they're released from custody as well. So that has been instrumental, a huge significant support for us. Can-Am Indian Friendship Center has provided cultural and Indigenous supports, which is obviously important, especially when we recognize the high amount of people who reported Indigenous roots. during our evaluation. But we've been really pleased in the summertime. They have been able to do some healing circles and things that we're hoping to get back to because there has been a slight service disruption lately. We also have legal assistance of Windsor on site, which does education for landlord and tenant rights, human trafficking and exploitation case management, and Indigenous justice support. I'll let some of the other, like we have the justice sector on here, so I'll let them chat about what they do. But the medical service, like I'd stated, is a huge benefit, and it's something that's always growing. We have a local shelter health network that is improving the access to care for medical needs for people experiencing homelessness, and that naturally intersects with the justice sector that is being serviced on site. So I'll focus on some of the housing outcomes because my justice partners are going to talk about some of the wins from their specific categories. But we've seen a significant amount of engagement. So we've had a 297% increase in attendance since opening, which we opened in 2020. And we average 141 people per day with 3 new clients attending daily. And in 2023 so far, we've had 101 housing placements, and it averages 44 days from intake with a housing worker to a housing placement. Just some context for homelessness in Windsor Essex. We presently have 717 people on the by names prioritized list. I just want to caveat that our community collects that number as households. So if I was a family of 4, we would count as one number on the by names prioritized list for our community. And that number is as of 2023. We are currently citing that this is a 30% increase in homelessness. And we did have a reach out to CMHA Windsor Essex County branch to understand how many people from the release from custody program at a snapshot, like one-time look, were experiencing homelessness. And as of December of last year, 50% of the clients that were actively supported by release from custody were experiencing homelessness after incarceration. So just to set up for my justice partners to take over for a minute, we just wanted to show you the context of why it was so important to have John Howard Society and Probation join our hub model to provide low barrier care for people. You can see that from the Windsor Waterworld office to Ontario Probation is a 55-minute walk. And as I'd mentioned, we have a lot of people with substance use complications or physical health challenges, mental health challenges, and doing that 55-minute walk or finding the bus route is pretty onerous. Additionally, the John Howard Society was roughly a 30-minute walk from our center as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. As Valerie stated, my name is Jennifer Dillon. I'm the programs manager at the John Howard in Windsor, Essex, and also the Chatham-Kent Bail Verification Supervision Satellite Office. Next slide. Sorry, I don't have access to the slides, so I have to say that every time. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the John Howard Society, just because everyone in attendance is not quite familiar with what we do here in Windsor, Essex, or across Canada. So we are present in 60 communities across Canada, and we do provide a wide range of services. We have been in Windsor, Essex for over 70 years, providing bail verification and supervision, as well as other services, and in the municipality of Chatham-Kent since 2017. We have developed, and we do continue to develop, as with H4, many community partners and to meet the needs of our clients. So in Windsor, and sorry, I just need to move this so I can see. In Windsor and Chatham, we do offer a variety of programming. We do have bail verification and supervision programs serving Windsor and Chatham, community case management and supervision. This is an alternative to detention for the CPSA. We serve Windsor. We have men's and women's anger management programs, a new financial literacy independence program, youth reintegration services that we provide in the county, and a variety of educational services as well for the schools. So our main program that benefits from H4 is the bail verification and supervision program. Bail is a release from custody for a person that has been charged with a criminal offense prior to being tried in court. This is known as a judicial interim release. So everyone in Canada has a reasonable right to bail, but not everyone has the financial or social supports to meet these requirements. So that's where us as the John Howard Society steps in. So prior to being enrolled in the bail program, those in custody must complete an eligibility assessment. So we do conduct this by phone, and the information they provide regarding their charges must be confirmed through legal counsel or the courts. We are able to accommodate in-person assessments, and that's attending the Southwest Detention Center, but that is something that we typically would have to set up through the social workers in advance. And typically we are only given maybe 24 hours notice of a bail hearing coming up. So once clients are released to the bail program, they are given by the courts a set of conditions that they must abide by. Two of the specific requirements that relate to our program is to reside at an address approved by us and to report as directed by us. And failure to abide by these conditions could result in being in a position of breach and a warrant being executed by the local police. So now that I've given you a little bit of a rundown, I'm sure you can see some of the obstacles that our clients do face. So a mass variety of our clients, they do have a no fixed address. So as Whitney stated previously, they could be residing in shelters, couch surfing, or living on the streets. So with having that condition to reside in an address approved by the bail program, that allows our clients to be able to move at short notice, or they can just notify us that they are staying at a shelter or they have no fixed address, being as we can approve that address. And being at H4 and having housing supports on site aids in the fulfillment of this requirement. And it gives us a centralized location that we know that our clients will be at. So transportation and weather are also major factors as to why people do not attend for their bail supervision appointments. H4 has become a central downtown hub. This minimizes clients' transportation costs and or being out in the elements. A lot of our clients do travel with all of their belongings, whether that could be a grocery cart, multiple bags. So having that 30-minute walk just from H4 to our office is a large barrier to them, especially when it's either hot or cold out. Another obstacle that our clients are facing that we've heard from them is the fear of the unknown. They don't know what to expect when they're attending our office. So us knowing that they attend H4 and they are comfortable and familiar with attending there, we are able to have that safe space for them to meet with them, especially for the first time until they become familiar with our caseworkers. Something we have also noticed with our clients, they are trying to complete all of their appointments in one day, whether that's going to probation, health services, social services, Ontario Works. So having that central hub location to where they can meet with all these service providers at once is very valuable to them. And the misconceptions about bail with our clients, this is another large obstacle. We have heard from them, if they miss one appointment, they think the police are going to be at our office waiting for them. So being able to be at H4, knowing they had missed an appointment and being able to connect with us there, it kind of reduces that fear, again, of the unknown, whether or not there will be an officer waiting for them. That is not the case, but that is a misconception that they do have. So when we first built the connection with H4, we were attending weekly, and this was in August 2022, and that was on Fridays. Our staff do work remotely on Fridays, so we would have a rotating member go in from 10 to 12. We were maybe seeing 1 to 2 clients per month. And that is not a lot, but we knew that it was something that would increase. And then we had a staffing shift, so we had no alternative, and we changed from Thursdays from 9 to 11. And this was actually beneficial for us because it had huge changes for the amount of clients that we did see. We now try to have the same staff member go every week. They are wearing a John Howard Society jacket. And from going from 1 to 2 clients per month, we have now increased to average 5 to 7 per week. So with that, that's a huge success at our office, and we celebrate it every week, because what that means, potentially 5 to 7 less breaches submitted to the Windsor Police Services, 5 to 7 less court dates, 5 to 7 less additional charges, ending up back in custody. So this is a huge success for us. We are hoping to get that even more, because there are some clients that still do attend H4 that we do not see, but more staff will be able to do that for sure. And how has H4 helped our clients, that partnership? So during our eligibility assessment, while we are interviewing people in Southwest Detention Center, we do inquire whether, when they do have no fixed address or they're couch surfing, we do inquire whether or not they do attend H4. And if they do, we try to encourage an agreement for release of information, because we do have an open line of communication with staff at H4, which has proved to be quite valuable. So a story that we consider a huge success was with our caseworker who attends on a weekly basis, Tony. So legal counsel for a client had called our office. This client was supposed to be in court that minute. They had to attend in person. So legal counsel had reached out to us looking for them, but this person had no fixed address, no phone. But being as Tony is there on a weekly basis and building this rapport and seeing this client and introducing herself to her caseworkers, the client's caseworkers, she was able to reach out to their housing supports, able to locate the client and get them in the court. So in the end, they did not incur additional charges for that. So that's another huge success that we've had so far. Thank you.
So we have a few questions in the chat if you want to take some now,
Yeah.
that way they're not all built up at the end. So,
Sure.
Okay, sorry, one sec. Okay, for clients without a valid health card, is that at all a barrier to accessing, sorry, my chat is moving by itself. Is that at all a barrier to accessing medical services in your center? And is there support to obtain ID?
It is not. People are able to attend without a health card. That's no problem. And so the only criteria to attend our center, because our center is still kind of small, and we do have capacity issues, like in the winter, our center is full. You do need to be actively experiencing homelessness in order to be able to attend. And, you know, at the end, I'll talk a little bit about our future state project, which is going to be more inclusive of people at risk of homelessness or precarious housing, or people who are more vulnerable that just need to obtain services. So yeah, that's not an issue. What was the second part of that question again?
Is there support to obtain ID?
Yeah, there is support to obtain ID, and that's through depending on their income. So we have a partnership with another provider through our Ontario Works office that will provide people's identification. If people are on ODSP, it's a slightly different process, but we do have the mechanisms to assist people in getting ID. We don't run a formal ID clinic out of H4, but I know that that requires like very specific. You have to have a lot of policies in place to run a full ID clinic, but we do have one down the street.
Okay. Next question from Flora is, how do you track or record medical care and the service and case management in your system? Do you have a standalone system for tracking? Does it integrate with other systems, such as a larger system of electronic medical records at hospitals?
Yep. We are like our shelter health system that is getting set up is presently, it's going to be operating off of Cerner, which is a giant medical documentation system. So we are built into like bigger models. The staff that are working at our site are able to see people's patient records. So if someone attended hospital and received care in the emergency department and they were discharged or they left hospital, whatever it might be, like a significant challenge in homelessness or just working with people with mental health concerns is, you know, you'll see a hospital bracelet on someone and you won't know what they went for, and they're not always the best historians. And having medical care on site can close that loop, even if it just requires them to call the hospital to, because they're within the circle of care, to obtain medical information. So there is a lot of benefits, but if anyone wants any more specific information about our shelter health partnership or how we're doing our medical care, they can just send me an email and I'll connect them to our team member who is definitely slightly more dialed in on it than I am. I'm the justice folk and she's doing the medical side of things, um, but it is extremely easily accessible and low barrier, and it is something we're building on. We don't have psychiatry there right now, but it's a hope for the future.
Okay, I just want to mention there's a lot of praise for your center in the chat as well. This is a fantastic system, great center. The next question is from Amber. Does 4-H serve as a safe use or safe supply site? If so, how is that managed in order to ensure the site remains service focused and safe? She asked because she has an integrated care hub in Kingston with similar services.
Yes, I'm familiar with the Kingston service. So H4 is not a safe supply site, and we don't allow substance use on site. However, substance use occurs in the perimeter of the site frequently. We're fortunate to have our Safe Point injection site within a couple meters of where we're operating. So there is a safe injection site with uh, medical supports on site there. However, there are people that choose not to access that service, or people that inhale substances that don't have an opportunity to use there. In which case, our H4 center is constantly working with people that are experiencing substance use, and they are fully trained with naloxone to provide overdose response. So as long as people are in a position where they can care for themselves and come into the center, they're welcome to. And even when people are on the cusp of not being able to care for themselves, they're welcomed into the center, and our staff monitor them for safety. But we don't allow people to use inside the premises.
Okay. I will take 2 more questions and then we'll continue with the presentation. The next question is your site a pickup location for belongings upon discharge, such as the Red Bag program?
So our site isn't a pickup location for that. We do have a red envelope program that operates in our community. Although I think it is pretty sporadically used at this present point because the system eventually became like a bit of a well-oiled machine. Um, just for additional context, we are within, like, I can actually see from the office that I'm presently in where our Ontario courthouse is and where H4 is. Like, our locations are very close. And when people do get released from custody at the courthouse, they would be a 2-minute walk to H4, and people are provided a bus ticket locally to go back to the Southwest Detention Center to collect their possessions, like their items that would exceed what a red envelope would typically allow them to carry, and provided with transportation back into the city as well. That was an agreement that the Southwest Detention Center entered into when the facility was built kind of on the outskirts of town.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, how do you deal with wait lists? How many staff are at the hub, and are staff funded through your funders, and or are they service providers from community organizations?
So wait lists, I'm assuming it's in reference to housing, in which case that's still like a very real challenge. Our geared to income wait list for someone who has a special priority 2, which in our community is homelessness, or even a special priority 1 for domestic violence, you're going to be on a wait list for over a year. Um, Homelessness, we say probably closer to 2 years, depending on the options you select. The nice thing is we do have a hard to house mandate. We do have some providers that are on site that have the ability to advocate to put people in units at a different rate if they are experiencing significant challenges in the housing market. But I don't know any community right now that's not challenged by housing waitlists for geared to income or rent subsidies. The staff at the hub, we always have 4 housing workers on site, but then we have Monday through Friday, and we have a bunch of, it would actually be hard to quantify exactly how many staff are at the hub based on how much in-kind staffing we have. So the beauty is like I work for the municipality, technically funded, like our programs are funded by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So we're paying for the housing functions, all of our medical functions and justice functions and CMHA and other providers that are coming on site are giving us staff in kind. So those are additional people that are always on site that we don't have built into the supervision model of the program. So there can be a lot of staff on site at any given time, but I believe we always have at least 8. And on the weekends, the number is a little leaner because programming is a bit lighter, but we are open 7 days a week, 8:30 to 6.
Okay, we will continue the questions at the end and we could continue with the presentation.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to pass it over to Anna to talk a little bit about the probation piece.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. My name's Anna Duffy. I'm a probation officer at the Windsor Probation and Parole Office. I've worked as a probation officer for just over 5 years now. So I'm here to speak a little bit about probation services involvement at the hub in Windsor. So we first began our pilot program, AKA the community outreach, in March 2020. So myself and another probation officer will attend on site about 1 to 2 times per week to meet with clients who are there. Our stats show that since we've been in attendance at the hub, we've met with over 200 individuals. 90% are clients that are on probation. The other 10% are community agency workers. So that's a very big number. So the way that it works is we don't operate as like a reporting center. However, clients who are in attendance at the hub are able to come and check in with us to confirm their next appointment, reporting dates, confirm conditions, reconnect with their probation parole officer. We can provide our clients with the next reporting date, gather info from the clients themselves, such as their current situation, possibly where they're staying, possible phone number, etc. So the way that it kind of works is probation officers are able to utilize the hub as a means of an attempt to contact and connect with their clients, much like we do with other local shelters, such as like the Downtown Mission or the Salvation Army, etc. However, the difference in this case, obviously, is that probation officers are on site at H4, able to meet with the clients when they're there, provide them with a verbal and in-person direct reporting instruction, rather than a phone call from the office. So as we know, individuals who frequent the local shelters are experiencing a variety of intersecting issues, homelessness, financial issues, whether the individual is on a fixed income, maybe the individual doesn't have any income at all. Transportation issues is huge, as Whitney mentioned earlier, like it's quite a hike from the hub to the probation office, about an hour walk. Mental health issues, addiction, physical issues, trauma, their own victimization, what have you. So the expectation for a transient client to report in person to the probation office can add another layer of stress to the situation, which often results in the client becoming overwhelmed and ultimately non-compliance with the probation orders. So having probation officers on site in the community, meeting the individuals where they're at, has provided many benefits. One benefit that Jen touched on too is it reduces the anxiety piece for clients struggling with transportation and the financial issues to attend in person to their appointment. So the fact that probation officers are on site, you know, say so-and-so missed their appointment, they couldn't get there for whatever reason, transportation, no funds to have, you know, purchase like a bus ticket, or sorry, a bus fare or a taxi, what have you. They can check in with us and we can give them a next appointment to hopefully encourage compliance for the next time. We've reconnected many transient clients to their probation officers to continue encouraging compliance. Many transient clients otherwise might not even have the opportunity or the means to be able to connect with probation while they're in the community. So we, like the point of contact could possibly very well only be while probation's on site at H4. By meeting with the clients on site at H4 and providing the client with the next reporting appointment date, we have reduced or prevented enforcement via a breach charge in many, many cases, which in turn reduces the backlog of charges in the court system, as well as helps to keep individuals out of the criminal justice system. Having probation officers on site, meeting the individuals where they're at in an environment that they attend often, can kind of present probation and parole officers as more like approachable, willing to, you know, work with the client, reduce that anxiety piece of seeing a probation and parole officer as more of an enforcer. And yeah, just like meeting them where they're at. I can imagine the anxiety that some individuals feel like just getting their foot in the door at a probation office. So there's many benefits for the clients. One big benefit for probation officers in my office in general has been liaising with the other community agencies that are on site at H4 when we're in attendance, such as housing workers, family services workers, Canadian Mental Health, John Howard Society, what have you. It's created a really good point of contact for us to kind of go forward with, to help better serve the individual in the community. So for example, like I might not be the specific probation officer for such and such who's working with the housing worker currently at H4 at that point in time. But if that individual shared with their housing worker that, they are on probation, they're unaware of who their probation officer is, the housing worker and them can come over. I'm able to look it up, provide the information, the contact number for that specific probation officer, hopefully an appointment, and there you go. So an example of a success story, we've seen many, but one that's really stuck out to me when I was preparing this presentation was, as stated earlier, the hub acts as a one-stop shop for clients to access and meet a variety of community agencies. So one example particularly was a female client who was released from the Southwest Detention Center. She was provided direct transportation from the Southwest Detention Center to the hub. Within 1 hour, she was able to check in with 4 different community agencies. She was able to speak with her housing worker, meet with Ontario Works, check in with John Howard, and check in with probation. That the likelihood of this individual being able to check in with 4 different agencies within an hour the same day that she was released from custody is highly unlikely. So that was a huge success. And we've seen many stories like that since our time. We've been going for about 1 year and 8 months now. So yeah, just to kind of wrap it up, we've already seen many benefits of our attendance there at the probation or at H4, excuse me. And personally, it's been a privilege to attend and be a part of what we call at the Windsor office, the H4 team. The experiencing is certainly humbling and exposed me to many firsthand intersecting issues that our clients are experiencing on a daily basis, which can ultimately prevent their ability to successfully comply with their probation order. Thank you so much for having me, everybody.
Thanks, Anna. I want to highlight a couple other additional justice partnerships and H4 connections that we've been able to get up and going in our community. Our community thankfully has a community justice coordinator. These were put in place to look at critically look at some of the additional cases that were in the justice system due to the COVID backlog, and to see if there is therapeutic sentencing or alternative sentencing or mitigation strategies that could be placed where people don't necessarily need, or perhaps they need a reduced involvement in the justice system. So one thing that we have established, if someone is on bail and they were experiencing homelessness at the time of their offense, and they receive and they obtain housing, and at that point we refer to our CJC coordinator. The last thing we want is for people that are experiencing homelessness to obtain housing and then to receive a 6-week sentence, which would, put them back into a position of homelessness. So we're thankful to have that partnership. Obviously, people's charges and the nature of those charges matters in the ability to divert them. But even to have the opportunity to work with the Crown's office to review these cases so that we can hopefully keep people housed and stabilized is a huge benefit to our community and to preventing the cycle of homelessness within the justice system. Additionally, we have the rehab officers from the Southwest Detention Center. They've toured H4 and they provide information to persons in custody about the services. And staff from the City of Windsor attend the Southwest Detention Center, I believe, quarterly for their community fairs to make sure that people have a huge understanding of what it is that we provide on site and what the opportunities are for them. Because as we know, people that are in remand centers don't always receive discharge planning, especially when they can swiftly get a disposition hearing, and then they don't have the opportunity to do that thorough debrief to make an established community plan. So while we understand that all of this ad hoc work that we're doing is really important, ultimately it's not the necessary solution to solve justice-involved homelessness in our eyes. This is stuff that we can do that is band-aiding the gap of people that continuously are getting stuck in cycles of poverty, homelessness, and incarceration. But we believe that transitional housing and supportive housing placements are necessary to provide safety and structure for a proper community reintegration. So we say this based on looking at data. So this is the provincial risk tracking database data for 2022. Windsor's community data does not look very different. So you'll see the trends between criminal involvement, housing, risk of housing loss, homelessness, social isolation, obviously mental health, and it's listed as drugs on here, which I know is not a popular term, but all of these things are risk factors that encompass people falling into homelessness and the justice system. And these are prioritized risk factors within the community safety and well-being program, which it falls under our municipality. So these are prioritizations we're looking at when we're looking at next stage housing. So we're particularly inspired by the High Support Housing Initiative out of Toronto that transitioned people from inpatient psychiatric care to supportive housing. But the background of these individuals had severe mental health challenges, cognitive impairments, medical complexities, substance use, behavioral challenges, minimal life skills, verbal and physical aggression, current or past involvement with the justice system. So this high support housing saved $51,000 to $58,000 per patient per year. And if you recall, the figure I pulled up at the beginning is that just putting people experiencing homelessness in custody is costing $6.3 million for Windsor. So from a cost saving analysis with how many individuals are using emergency medicine, getting caught up with policing and the judicial system and incarceration, we recognize that supportive housing for some of the more vulnerable individuals that are intersecting with the justice system is the solution out of this. So we've had a community consultation with Gloss, Arc, and Eng, who went through and did focus groups, one-on-one interviews, and presentations to understand how our community wanted to best address homelessness for this specific population. And we've come up with 64 units of flexible housing with housing and income support. So we're looking to have a purpose-built hub with the ancillary housing support on top. So a supportive housing model on the second floor. And then if you look in the bottom here, we are hoping to build other single bedroom small homes on site for people that have aged out of the support and no longer need that level of care. So our hub on site would have laundry, lockers, cafeteria, outdoor courtyard. People could access the hub space during the day, and then there's housing above, or people can stay in their housing above. Anyone in the community experiencing homelessness or needing justice services, low barrier medical services, people experiencing poverty can access the hub during the day, which would expand our current footprint of only having people in the program that are actively in a homelessness position. So we're currently looking for funding and trying to develop that model further. And it is a priority for our community to build this facility. This is just a thank you from the team that works at H4 and the previous puppy that was the first therapy support dog, I would say, on site, which is Bryn. And I always say that, like, I get to present and share the model of people, but I'm not on the ground working day to day with the individuals that our team is. So I think it's important to showcase the individuals that are actually doing the hard work that is creating the beautiful statistics and building the program that so many people trust and support, which is creating this growth for us to continuously add layers of programming to meet the needs of the community. Here's our contact information. I'll leave this on the screen while we take any further questions from the group.
Okay, so we'll go on to the rest of the questions. I think there's quite a few now. So given the high percentage of, sorry, it keeps moving. I guess people are putting things in the chat. One moment. Sorry. Given the high percentage of brain injury, how has that informed your services, and how is TBI measured? Is it self-reported, or are individuals screened for brain injury?
Yeah, so our statistic that we have is self-reported brain injury. And We do have assisted living Southwestern Ontario, which provides brain injury intervention. We do have the ability to get people put on wait lists for more specialized services. We aren't personally conducting any sort of scoring assessments or doing any sort of testing, but we do have linkages to the staffing that can provide that level of support and care. And our municipalities recently, within the last 2 years, just built 2 supportive housing facilities that are run by Assisted Living Southwestern Ontario. So when we do have individuals that we recognize have a lot of complexity with brain injury, then we can try to streamline them to see if they're eligible for that supportive housing placement. That placement is run by our by names prioritized list, which can sometimes be like a bit of a hiccup in the queue for people getting those services. But yes, we do have linkages to those services, but we're not regularly performing assessments on site.
Okay. Candace says, thank you for this fantastic presentation. This collaborative, low barrier on-site model is something the provincial HSJCC will want to profile as a best practice model and see if we can advocate for other communities, especially those with community reintegration planning tables. I'm wondering if you could comment on what would be required to sustain this model. I understand partners are giving their time in kind, and we know providers are already stretched thin. What advice would you have for community partners who are looking to work with municipalities to create a similar hub model?
Yeah, I think that sustained funding is probably the biggest challenge. This is, it's not a wildly expensive endeavor, but it's also not incredibly cheap either. And we've been fortunate that our municipality has always been willing to pay extra dollars that go beyond our provincial and federal allocations for homelessness should we need that in order to keep it operating. And that's just for the housing costs and the security costs that we do have on site. I do think that like one sector that we are really challenged to engage with is the health sector, because we know that they're stretched so thin, and we do recognize the need for them to be on site. So getting additional mental health counselors and things like that are things that our current community is already limited in their ability to give us in-kind counseling. So some days we do have them on site. Like for instance, last week we had a bereavement day for individuals that we've lost in the community, and we did have the Canadian Mental Health provide bereavement therapy on site, which is wonderful. But the regularity of that service is challenged by the capacity. So I think that investments from other ministries to recognize a models like this, the success and the impact it can have on the community, would be something that would be beneficial to sustain it and to welcome it in other sectors. And this is a model that myself and my colleague Kelly Gauze have presented at lots of municipal forums. So if there's any municipalities that are looking to get involved in this, or if you're challenged by engaging with your municipality, you can always message us. And I'm confident that they've seen our presentation at this point, and we'd be happy to establish or provide any information about memorandums of understanding or funding models, how we've structured it, anything that would be a win so other people could start these.
Okay, great. All right, we are at 7 minutes, so we'll take a few more questions. Brenda says Psychotherapy Matters is a new provincial system for engaging psychiatrists with other coordinated public and private agencies. It expedites referrals to psychiatry by a registered psychotherapist. This could be an interesting partnership or opportunity for this program to engage psychiatry.
That's awesome. We'll look into that for sure.
Okay, and then there's more praise for your amazing center. Thanks for sharing. Amazing work happening at the hub. Just wondering, would these 64 housing units be under a landlord and tenant agreement?
Yeah, I think that that's something that we're still in the mix of figuring out. Ideally, these 64 housing units would be a multi-purpose. Like if we're talking like true dream state, I would love for some of them to be bail beds and transitional beds, and perhaps that's run by our John Howard Society, or perhaps our Canadian Mental Health Association runs some transitional housing for people that are aging out of the Safe Beds program. That's part of the 64 units. Like allocating some of those specifically for justice and having that commitment would be amazing. We also recognize that there's a need for a homelessness medical portion. So having partners with the Ministry of Health. So while we're thinking of like the different functions of the 64 units and what their placement would be in that facility, that would probably constitute some of them having a landlord and tenant agreement and some of them having more of a participation agreement or a supportive housing program.
Okay, thank you. So we're at the 5-minute mark. Snehal, do you think we have time for any oral questions, or did you want to do the closing now? Or
yeah, I think we can do the closing now so that we can give folks a few minutes to do the evaluation survey at the end as well.
okay.
So I will go ahead with that. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, awesome. Well, please join me today in thanking our speakers for their great presentations and for sharing their knowledge with us. Again, I would like to remind folks to also please take a few minutes to complete the evaluation. That link can be found on the session description page. This is very, very important to us. Again, we do use this information for our future events, so we would love to hear from you. And again, thank you to our speakers and for everyone, for your participation and your insightful questions. We will now be taking about a 60-minute lunch break to recharge. We do encourage you to use this time to connect with the fellow participants and to also view our wonderful poster presentations or to check out the several exhibitor booths that we have going on. And just a gentle reminder that we do have some wonderful networking sessions and to please enjoy a pre-recorded mindfulness session as well. So please do enjoy your lunch until 1 p.m. and join us back in the conference plenary for 1 p.m. for our keynote panel, which will be highlighting crisis response services and models across Ontario. That will be very, very exciting and informative. And just join a few minutes early to make sure that you can chat with your colleagues using the chat feature. So I will end here. Thank you again to our presenters and to Valerie for moderating and for all of you for joining. And just a reminder again to complete that evaluation survey. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, Snehal. Thanks for that amazing presentation.
Everyone for hanging out with us. It was great.